Hey, welcome back to the J&Z podcast. Last week we reviewed Back to the Future Part 1.
Great.
It was a lot better than I remember.
Yeah.
Because when I went back through and I watched it again, because you mentioned this before, how you felt like a kid.
Yes.
And you were like, oh my god, is Marty going to make it back in time?
I know, right? So we actually just got done watching Part 2.
Like, what, 30 seconds ago?
Honestly.
We literally were smiling running up the stairs to film this.
I was so excited to film this.
I'm pumped.
Because there's so much energy. Like, this is definitely a sequel that I feel like they didn't really plan at first, too.
Well, so that's what I'm curious about. I don't know if you know about this, but when I asked that, because I don't know, because they shot the first one.
Yeah.
And it ended very clearly with Marty, we have to do something about your kids.
Something has got to be done about your kids.
When Doc runs back to his house. And so they were teeing, what happens if they just didn't pick up the second, would people just have to live the rest of their life not knowing,
Probably. It's probably it's probably like The Breakfast Club, where people, it ends, and people are like, that's great, but what happened on Monday morning? Was it just awkward where the jock just beat up the nerd and was just like, hey, forget about March 24th, 1985. Forget about it. We didn't hang out and have a heart-to-heart, okay? Don't look at me! Don't look at me! So I'm betting anyone who saw it that Friday in 1985 was like, all right, so I think what's gonna happen is they're gonna meet up.
That's also what's insane is because I can't go 30 seconds with a show on Netflix without going to the next episode and figuring out. They had to wait a year?
Mm-hmm. Isn't that crazy?
That's insane to me.
Especially thinking about it now, where and I've actually been thinking about this with Marvel movies. I remember being a kid and it would be Iron Man came out and spoiler alert. I mean, come on, it's Iron Man. But spoiler alert, he ends it with, I am Iron Man. I am Iron Man.
I mean, is that really a spoiler? If they ended it any other... what were they gonna play?
I'm Batwoman. That's
I'm She-Hulk.
I'm She-Ra. That is the thing, though, is it ends with that. Yeah. Obviously, you have the whole, this is the Avengers Initiative. But, that's a movie where it's okay, there's an ending to this. And but nowadays, we know when Spider-Man 30's coming out. They slate it for, all right, in the next 20 years, here's when every single superhero movie comes out, where it's just if I watch Infinity War, I was like, wow, this is really sad. People are crying. But they're all going to come back.
You hope.
Yeah, exactly. You hope, but they even...
You hope you see Doctor Strange doing the weird hand thing.
Exactly, using I'm Doctor Strange and welcome to Disney Channel. him doing the line and they're just standing there smugly, up next, Hilary Duff. I'm Doctor Strange.
Okay. Not to tangent too much, so
big tangent.
Yeah.
But even that Marvel movie does reference Back to the Future Part 2.
I'm
just to bring it back,
they
do reference Back to the Future Part 2.
Yeah, one thing before we really get into it that I want to just briefly mention is I don't think we're going to talk too much about the time travel paradox.
Hi, I'm Robert Zemeckis, and don't think about it. If you don't know what we're talking about watch episode 1 or listen to it. Don't think about this one in particular. Part 3 is fine. Don't think about this one.
Yeah, because I'm the guy, we're watching it, right? And I pause it and I go, okay, so back to what they did earlier. This makes no sense at all.
No, it doesn't.
And so I was like, but the time machine, look how cool it looks. I'm like, true.
Exactly. You can't break this one down. They're not going to show this movie in film courses and be all right, guys, we're going to take notes on what a perfect script. This movie's not perfect.
No, because the first one, there's a couple things where you kind of look at it and you're like, that doesn't really add up. But this one, it's they go forward, back,
and sideways, this way, that way. I mean, we watched it with someone, and all of their criticisms were valid.
Yeah, oh yeah.
All of it. It's how does this person not hear someone in their backseat?
Yeah.
If I'm driving a car and someone whispers, I'm like...
It's someone was okay, Robert, we have some critiques for you on the film that we want you to change before it moves to production. And he goes, okay, perfect, let me know.
See no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil. So, alright, so they're about to kiss. Jennifer and Marty, they're about to kiss, and just like the previous movie, it's interrupted, but it's with Doc driving the DeLorean into a bunch of garbage cans.
It's the iconic sound of the time machine. Right, yeah. Then he flies into shot, runs over the trash cans, and Doc looks like a crazy person in the first one, just how, like, theatrical and wild he look when he gets out of the car, and that he looks insane.
It's worse. And if you pause the movie in the beginning of this, when the car hits the garbage cans, it's a stunt double.
Really?
Yes, it literally looks like a guy wearing one of those old wigs. Like just a blind old wig just driving his car. But he hops out and immediately, again, cocaine, like he grabs garbage and he's like, Marty, this'll make the car drive. This'll make the car fly.
And he's like, I need fuel.
And it's banana peels. He's taking banana peels and dropping it in something and be like, we gotta move the car. The car's gotta move. It's your kids. And then, of course, we don't become assholes or anything, do we?
Yeah. Because he's wondering, Marty's like, why? Like, what are you freaking out about?
Exactly.
Like, we have to do something about your kids, Marty.
And he's just like, do we? Like, I think my life's good here. But then he's just like, all right, I guess we do. And he uses Mr. Fusion.
Yeah. So that's my first kind of time paradox question is, like, why does he go into the future to solve the future problem? Why doesn't he just say, hey, Marty, at this point in time in the future, just tell your kid not to do this.
That is definitely, like...
Because the whole movie, Doc is like, we can't use the time machine because it's so dangerous and blah, blah, blah. And it's like, why don't you just tell them when this time comes, just don't do this?
That's a problem with a lot of movies where it's like, if person A said this thing, then the whole movie's fine. Like, the entire problem's solved.
Right.
Like, in Back to the Future, where
there's not a movie.
Yeah, there's not a movie. It's just a simple sentence, and then it's like, end credits, Robert Zemeckis. Like, it plays the credits. Well, they hop in the car, and they have where we're going, we don't need roads. Yep. And they fly off, and there's a bunch of clouds. Well, one thing I read about, right before the movie played, is that the cinematographer for this movie is Dean Cundey. He did the cinematography for Jurassic Park, Steven Spielberg, Hook, Steven Spielberg, and he did Who Framed Roger Rabbit, which is one of my favorite movies.
That is a good movie, yeah.
And there's a scene coming up where Marty is walking around Futureland, and he sees a Roger Rabbit stuffed animal. It's right next to the almanac. And I thought that was cool.
That is really cool.
Inside, I didn't want to say it to you, but I was like, oh my gosh, that's Robert. That's Who Framed Roger Rabbit. I love that movie. Please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry.
So they go back in time, but now it's like you get all of like the thought process of people sitting in a writer's room and they go, okay, the movie's going to take place in 2015. What's going on? Go.
Exactly. And that's 30 years from 1985.
And it's funny because if anyone asks me what's going to happen 30 years from now, my first response is flying cars.
My first response is Mad Max. Mad Max Fury Road. That's what I imagine. Which Strickland, we'll get to it, but the man looks like he's ready for battle for Mad Max. We'll get to it, but I'm making a mental note.
Yeah, making a mental note. But yeah, so I'm assuming they're brainstorming in this room, like, what does 2015 look like? It would be like if we sat down and we're like, what does basically 2050 look like?
Yeah.
It would be because and there's other movies that do it too, like Terminator does it, and I really like
Star Trek.
Right. I really like how Terminator does it, though, because they don't really give you a lot of exposure.
No.
It's just, like, really dark, and, like, it's a war scene. But in Back to the Future, it's like...
It's bright.
Yeah, you get to see the whole town of Hill Valley. So they're like, it takes them to basically a freeway in the sky.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, like, Marty's like, I've been through this before.
Right? I can handle this rodeo.
Right, so he's just asking Doc all, like, the questions, but then Jennifer is, like... asking the hard-hitting questions.
She's asking specific questions, which I read a little bit of trivia, and the director and the writer was like, we really didn't know what to do with Jennifer. And when you watch this movie...
you kind of see it.
Oh, yeah, no. She's knocked out twice in this movie. Like, they might as well have used a Jennifer doll.
Can you imagine if you were hired as an actor, and they're like, oh, what's my part of the next play? It's like, oh, we're going to knock you out again.
Yeah, multiple times. You're going to say, like, a couple lines to the big actors, and then you're just a body.
Yeah.
And so the writer and director actually came out and were just like, yeah, we probably should have cut her for part 2 because she doesn't do anything in this movie.
Not really. Even the scenes that she's in where, like, plot happens, it's not like... anything. It just adds like suspense, I guess, which we'll get to that scene, but it doesn't really like. There's no critical plot with her.
And it's so awkward because, like you said, she's like, so, what's our marriage like? What's the color of our kids' eyes? Like, do they have all of their fingers and toes? And Doc's like, fingers and toes, I gotta knock her out.
So like, he has this like realization. He like looks off in the distance, and then so picture you're Marty, okay? Yeah. So Doc just pulls out this futuristic device and holds it to her face. Like, that's your girlfriend. Like, what would you, Doc? What are you doing? Which is what he says
exactly.
But then she just like,
and basically, Doc is like, she got too close, Marty. she found out too much. It's like
she's asking too many questions.
Yeah, how many other women has he used that on?
It's the back to what you said last week. It's like Marty 1, Marty 2, Marty's Jennifer 9.
Jennifer 9, Jennifer 10. Like, imagine if someone came up and he's just like, Doc Brown, you've been served with divorce. It's like he's just knocking out divorced people. Like, anyone that comes up is just like, you're getting sued by the singer.
That's how he solves all of his problems.
That's why he's a loner, is he just knocks people out.
He's laying in bed, he's like, I'm having a hard time falling asleep.
Points it at himself. That's so great. But yeah, so Jennifer she's knocked out.
Yeah.
They're flying through, and then they land. And
then they're like in an alleyway.
They are in an alleyway.
Yeah. And when they land, this is something that I had brought up when we were watching it that just didn't make any sense. They pulled Jennifer out of the time machine and just put her on a pile of garbage, basically.
Yeah. What I noticed about the garbage that I thought was kind of cool is they were like cubes of garbage, kind of like if you've ever seen Monsters, Inc., when it comes out as a garbage and he's just
terrifying
like...
Scene
when he's like, she's dead, the little girl is dead.
It's a terrifying
Mike
scene.
Wazowski. That type of cube, but they're like discs in it, which I thought was cool. Yeah, if you rewind it and pause it, there's like these laser discs inside these cubes of trash. But yeah, they throw her body on garbage, and he's like, Marty's like, dude, what's gonna happen to her? And and Doc's like, don't worry about it. She's gonna sell for a lot of money in the black market.
Don't worry, she'll be safe. It'll just be for a few minutes.
But the other thing too is it's like I wonder up until this point how much of the future has Doc experienced. Because, like, I found the scene really funny. He is like, Marty, now that you recognize me, he, like, starts pulling off this extra skin.
Terrifying.
Yeah.
It's terrifying. It made me think of American Psycho. In the beginning of American Psycho, where he's like, there is no me. It's like, there is no Doc Brown. I'm a shell. I'm simply not here, Marty.
and he's talking about all this like medical like stuff he went through. Like he got new blood, new spleen, new colon.
God.
I know. And he's like
just opening him up. Some doctor's opening up. He's like, Doctor, give me new colon.
So let me ask you a question. So let's say he does all this like futuristic medical stuff.
Yeah.
Right? Like let's say he has like a bionic heart or whatever. Mm-hmm. And then he goes and lives the rest of his life in 1985. But then something medically goes wrong and the doctors cut him open. And it's like, does he have a robotic heart?
It's like RoboCop. Like they cut him open and they're like, I can't touch this. Like, he's going to be like E.T. and the FBI is going to come through and put him in.
Like, did they just, like, save his heart like they saved the hand in Terminator?
Yes, they're going to take him to, like, a black box where no one's around, they're going to shut off the cameras and be like, we need to operate on this man. We need to know where he's from.
I feel like this could be a separate TV show.
It's definitely an X-Files episode. Like, there's thousands of episodes. There's definitely an episode where they're like, Mulder, I can't believe we found his body.
Yeah. So then Doc kind of explains to Marty why they're there. So, and I actually kind of like that they do this, even though there's some plot holes in doing this. But
huge.
They always have like a picture or something that will change when they fix the problem, right? So Doc pulls out a newspaper and he goes, your kid basically fucks up.
Yes.
And like robs someplace, and it's a newspaper basically saying that his kid's been arrested for something that he did with Griff, which is the alternate reality. Yeah, younger Biff or whatever it is.
That was something that you said when we watched the movie that I thought was cool, was when you're like, oh, they still have newspapers. And it's like...
That's so, yeah.
It's like, I don't think that the directors could predict, like, smart screens to, like, read...
It's just funny because it's like when you're thinking about all like the future innovations of like 30 years from now, they're like, oh, flying cars, new spleen, new face, new blood, but we're still gonna read a newspaper.
Yeah, we're still gonna pick up paper. Like paper is not gonna die.
Do you think that like someone was just hell bent on keeping newspapers?
Oh, 100%. Someone was just like, no,
what
we
about
have
smartphones?
to
put it in.
Yeah, put the paper in. Paper will never look at me. Paper will never go out. Okay, it's only paper.
Yeah,
and that person's like in a bunker right now. It's like paper's dying. He's the one. He's pulling his skin off, true, just like Doc.
But so he shows Marty like what his kid did and what he has to fix.
Yep.
He also kind of explains how he figured that out. Like he had apparently been bouncing through points in the time to like figure out that was the moment that kind of like unveiled Marty's family. And so he's like, you need to go to this place, Cafe 80s, and whatever you do, say no to Griff.
What I thought was really cool watching this is kind of like, he even mentions nostalgia, and he's like, yeah, it's, it's kind of a fad. And I still think about that because I think about like the 80s nostalgia when we had like the beginning, like Stranger Things, a lot of 80s fashion that came out about 10 years back or whatever. Like 80s nostalgia is really big. So
mullets are huge right now.
Oh yeah, mullets are huge. Yeah. All of that. So I just thought that was really cool, like the neon and everything. But young Marty,
the one thing, like,
I want to push that kid into a locker.
Well, before we get to young Marty, what I find really interesting is Marty never questions Doc.
No.
Like, think about the situation where he's like, just tell Griff no. My first question would be, what the hell is he going to ask me to do?
Yeah, and who is Griff?
Right.
Who is Griff?
He gives him, like, no information. Like, picture this. He gives you no information, but also tells you in the same sentence, this one event ruins your entire family.
It'd be like if he came up to me and was like, on the day of the 25th, you need to rob that guy named Joe. It's like...
It's more like, if you don't fix this problem, COVID happens.
Exactly. Oh, God. It's like...
And you're like, wait, COVID? He's like,
what's COVID?
Just go to the bar. Just solve the problem.
You need to solve the problem. You play a lot of puzzle games. You look like a nerd.
Marty, be careful around that Griff character. He's got a few short circuits in his bionic implants.
Like, oh, Jesus Christ.
Yeah, and so, this is the first time you see Marty Jr.
I hate him. I know it's Michael J. Fox playing Marty Jr., but
he does it so good that it doesn't seem like him.
No, and he's just like, his hair's all messy, and he's got like his hand, like, if you're listening, he's got his hand inside his jacket, and it's all flappy.
Yeah.
And he's just checking out all the women that are walking past, and I just want to bully him. Like, I just want to throw him in a locker. His voice, like,
high-pitched voice.
The way he gets his voice, and just, like, slimy, and I hate it. So then we go into Cafe 80s.
Yeah, this is an interesting take, and you pointed out something that I thought was really interesting, because one of the first things you see, other than all the chaos that's going on, is you see this like old-timey like game, but it's on like it's not a console. What do they call that? It's like a
case. It's like a case.
Right. And it's a gunslinger game, and one of the kids that is playing it is Elijah Wood.
Yep, it's one of his first roles, actually, which I thought was pretty cool. It's just like he went from Back to the Future trilogy to Lord of the Rings trilogy.
Yeah, but the thing too, though, that like I would say they nailed is video games are super nostalgic.
Oh, 100%.
Like a lot of people will pay tons of money to get like older games.
And right around then, arcades were huge.
Oh, true, yeah.
So definitely for that time, and I would have played a ton of that game because it was just like a cowboy game, which Back to the Future Part 3 being cowboys, I thought was really cool. Cool. But I just love the fact that Elijah Wood's like, hey, that's a baby game. I would have been like, shut up, kid. Look at me. You think you can beat my high score? Huh? Look at me. Oh, you can't look at me. I would have turned into like Griff at that moment. I just pushed that kid over, stolen a soda.
But yeah, so Marty's kind of just taking in the future, and
you have a creepy Ronald Reagan screen that's like buy our cheese.
It's always morning in America, even in the afternoon.
It's just like, okay, calm down. You have Michael Jackson talking about like Coke products.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of tube TVs, which again, they were really close to flat screens. Like,
they were close.
Really, really close. Like, which I was thinking about it, and you made a note about this on some of the cars about Elon Musk. Because they look like Teslas.
They all look like Teslas.
And it's like, I wonder if Elon Musk was like sitting in a dark room watching Back to the Future Part 2, and he's like, yes, I will build that.
That's his version of the flux capacitor.
Exactly. Like, he's sitting there and he's like, I am actually Biff.
Can you imagine if it was like, Elon, how did you come up with the Tesla? He was like, I was on my bathroom hanging a clock and I fell.
Exactly.
And then I drew this.
After I fell off my toilet, I drew this.
So he's in Cafe 80s.
Yes.
Basically. And
he's watching the younger side of him just get the shit beaten out of him.
Well, so the big scene is Griff walks in.
Yes.
But wait. Yeah. We forgot though, because it also shows old Biff.
Okay, yes. So in the beginning of the movie, older Biff, older Biff, he comes out and he sees the DeLorean flying in the air, and he's like, why is there a DeLorean flying in the air? And I actually took a note of this. How many other people saw the car fly?
Well, so even to that point, at the very, very beginning of Back to the Future Part 2, where Doc's like, Marty, we have to go to the future. Biff, from that timeline of 1985, watches them fly into the air, go into the future, and then he goes, what the hell is going on here?
Honestly, so basically from that time to 2015, he's thought about it.
Right.
So he's making, like, helping make dinner or eating the scraps from the McFlys.
He's like blankly staring off into the distance.
He's got the...
Sweetie, what are you thinking about? Nothing.
He's got the Full Metal Jacket, like, he's got the 1,000-yard stare, just knowing, like, 2015... it's gonna fly. Like, that's all he's thinking about. Like, hey, Biff, look at me, buddy. Just, so, old Biff is there.
Yeah, I've seen you around.
And he sees Griff, and Griff's like, Grandpa, I told you to put another coat of paint on my car. Yeah, I'll get to it. He's got this badass cane.
Yeah. And then he like, throws the old man outside, and then he tells Marty Jr., he's like, don't go anywhere, I'm coming back for you. And then that's when, like, Marty, like, realizes that's his son, basically. But then, it's what you were saying. Basically comes in and just gets... what's funny is it's the way that Griff, like, interacts with Marty Jr. is almost the same way that Biff interacted with George McFly.
Yes, except with Griff, he really is like RoboCop. Like, he's part metal. Like, Marty even tries to throw a punch, grabs it, and twists him. Like, and he actually gets bigger, which I was like, that's terrifying. Like, he's like part Terminator. And the people he hangs out with are, I mean, they're scarier than 1950s guys. Like, there's a girl that's got like a blade on her finger, looking like Sonya Blade from Mortal Kombat.
What's wrong, McFly?
That's true.
And she's got like a red eye.
She's like paint. Like, it's not like mascara, it's like paint.
Eye.
Yeah.
Like, that freaked me out. Yeah. Like, these people would, like, they'd fuck you up.
If you think back to the first movie where Biff had his, like, 3 stooges.
Oh, yeah, no,
basically.
they trip over each other.
Yeah, and in this one, they look like hired assassins, is how I would describe them.
Yeah, Griff was like, no, you look weird. No, yes, you. They look like they would all be in Batman Returns.
Yeah.
Like, they look like they'd hang out with, they'd be hired by Penguin. Like, Danny DeVito would be like,
okay, Penguin, Bane, get over here.
Penguin would be like, you got the red on your eye. Let me show you my flipper trick. So, basically, Marty... he ends up swapping with his son. Like,
well, so Griff throws him over the counter.
Yep.
And then Marty, or the dad, is basically like, stay here and shut up.
Yeah, shut your mouth.
Stay down and shut up.
Yeah, and then he like flips over the counter and is basically like, no, Biff, I'm not going to do it, which is like a complete different character change because Marty Jr. is basically like, I'll do whatever you want.
Yeah, I'm spineless.
Yeah.
Call me chicken and I'll do anything.
Yeah, and speaking of chicken, so that's like a huge...
It's a trigger word. It's like...
That's great.
It's like if someone's an assassin and they hear like potato and immediately they snap into being a killer. Like, it's literally like, it's the word that triggers Marty every single time.
Yeah.
Which I thought about it. It's like, what if Marty's hanging next to a cliff and someone's like, I dare you to jump off, McFly. And he's like, no, kill me. What are you?
I'm not an idiot. I'm not going to jump off.
What are you? Chicken, McFly? Nobody calls me. That's him dead. That's him dead.
Yeah. So basically, he like has this boat of confidence and is like, no, I'm not going to do it, blah, blah, blah. To which Griff obviously is like irritated by this, which then kicks off like a very common and continue to be used chase scene through the town of Hill Valley.
And it's kind of cool. It's really cool now, though, because, again, you've got the Tesla cars, and then you have hoverboards. Yeah, which made by Mattel, which was actually kind of funny, because it's like, oh, they make toys. So this is baby stuff.
But, like, if you think about the scene in detail, it's like he runs out of the cafe, takes a, like, object to speed himself up, like a skateboard, hoverboard, whatever, from a kid, and then runs around the town.
That's really cool. Why?
And if you think about
that's so cool.
But if you think about Back to the Future Part 1, it's the same exact thing, right? So it's basically like, hey, you can copy my homework, but just make it look a little different.
And make it look kind of cool. But it is funny because I remember a couple years back when they started like trying to sell hoverboards, and hoverboards were catching on fire. And there's a kind of funny video of Mike Tyson falling off a hoverboard. So just like in this movie, there's VR and there's hoverboards. Yeah. And I don't know about you, but I don't know many people who have a VR or hoverboard.
I think VR it's still too early, I think.
Yeah, but it's just funny because we saw that, and now we're just like, hoverboard? Like, that's kind of cringe, not gonna lie.
Yeah,
like,
a little bit, yeah.
But, so, Marty gets on it, he starts floating, then you have Griff with the Mad Dog 2020. With just spikes, he's just like, come here, get over here, with his cronies. Like, that was pretty cool. Obviously, it's paint by, it's like ABC. It's the same, like you said, it's basically the same as the first one. Yeah,
to a T. Except for the climactic end of the scene is he is in the hoverboard in the middle of the water of the town. And for whatever reason, the hoverboard doesn't work on water.
And what's the line where he's just like,
"I'll work on water unless you've got power."
Power. Like, do you know what I'm saying? Like, I can't remember it, but just the actor, like, he's got like one line, and Robert Zemeckis was like, "You gotta sell it. Like, just go for it." That's the thing I really like about this movie is there's a couple extras who have a couple lines, like the one guy that's like, "Hey, I think you stole your wallet."
See, but I don't think it was Robert Zemeckis that was like, "You need to nail this." I think it was the other person that's like, "I have one line in the sequel to Back to the Future. This is going to kickstart my career, and I'm not letting anyone take this."
That would be me. Like, someone would be like, "All right, so you're in Superman 20. I need you to just say water is wet." And I'd be like, "Oh my God. Water is wet," and they'd be like, "That's a that's a weird delivery." But I just love the guy. Like, the camera it's going forward, but the guy's behind him, and he's just like, "It doesn't run." Like, just it's great. It's so good. Yeah. So Marty is he's trying, and then I forgot what he does. He does something.
So it's so funny because he's like frantic. Like he's panicking and he's like trying to kick his foot in the water. And then Griff has the bat and he's like getting ready to hit him. Batter up! And he just jumps off the board.
Yeah, that's so he just jumps in the water.
Yeah,
and
like
then,
why were you panicking? Like if it was me, I would have like a smirk on my face because I'm like, I'm just gonna jump in the water.
I know how to swim. Like,
right, yeah.
Like, are you guys aliens where water touches you and you burn?
Right.
Like,
yeah.
And it's really weird because they have this thing that shoots out where it's like water skiing. Like, they all have the contraption that flings them into the clock tower.
Yeah, so because Griff has the huge hoverboard and they clip onto it, basically. So it's like they're like knee boarding, kind of.
Right. It just throws them through the bank.
They like
clock tower.
We're going too fast or something, and they fly into the clock tower. Yeah, and then like the cops show up and all this stuff, and Marty gets back.
What I like though is when Marty he kicks off of it and walks up to the little girl. He's like, "Hey, cool toy, kid. You want it back?" And she's like,
"Keep it. I got a pit bull now."
"No, I've got Mad Dog 2020. It's got spikes and there's a flamethrower. I think there's a gun in this."
Like, what happened to her? Like, did she just like take that and become another?
Oh my God!
villain?
Yeah. What if in the future it turns into Mad Max and she's Furiosa? She's got like one metal arm and an eye patch, and she's like, "He gave me Mad Dog 2020, and now I live off of blood. I am Queen Empress." Like, that's how he changed the future for the worst.
Yeah. I'm sure there's little stuff like that they did in the future that just like
ruined it.
Well, yeah, and time is just so confusing.
Oh yeah, it doesn't make sense.
Speaking of like one pivotal moment in the movie, like they're happy, everything's going good, they finished it. Like Marty's getting ready to go back and find Doc.
Yep.
And there's one random extra that he runs into because he's looking at all of like the visually displayed art. Like he sees like Jaws 19.
That was cool.
Where it's like, this is really, really personal.
Yeah, and there's like a 3D animation that goes and like tries to eat him.
But then he sees like this visual board of the Cubs winning the World Series. And this random person bumps into him. And he's like, oh, man, if only I knew they were going to win. I would have went back to the beginning of the season and put some money on the Cubbies.
Said I wish I could go back to the beginning of the season. Put some money on the Cubbies.
What'd you say? I said I'd go back and... Stupid kid, I'd go back and I'd make the bet. Were you not listening? He looks like you said, Count Olaf.
He looks like Count Olaf.
Like, if you've ever read the series of Unfortunate Books or seen the Jim Carrey version, he looks like Count Olaf. Like, he looks like he looks like one of the goblins from Sorcerer's Stone.
Right.
Just all grown up.
And it's like, if you've seen the movie, because he is in the next scene getting ready to buy the sports almanac, which is what like causes all the major problems in the movie. If you just didn't run into him, time machine goes back, movie's done.
Yep.
Like, roll credits.
Roll credits. But there was something that I caught this time around that I thought was weird. So Marty goes in, and she's talking about the almanac, and something I thought was cool is she's like, yeah, you can buy a sleeve for it that's dust. And I was just like, that's just a rich white person thing to buy. Yeah. Like, oh, I'll spend $3,000 for dust.
So I'm glad you said that, because that's the other thing that they kind of messed up was inflation.
Yeah.
Because he's like, do you have any money to save the clock tower? Do you have a spare $100 on me?
Yeah, dude. They're like, I mean, $100 is $1 now, so
yeah.
But
I'm sorry, $100 is still $100.
Exactly. $100 is $100.
Yeah.
I saw a poster in the back though, and it said "Instant Infant." That's weird. Like, if you pause it and it was just a smiling baby, I'm like, what kind of black market operation are they running in the back? Where they're just like, get your child here, and just chucking children, like, instant infant. I'll give you $10,000 for the child. They're just gambling for children.
There's
just like
so much to unpack with that.
What if they harvest like children?
But it's
now
like,
I sound like a conspiracy theorist. Just like,
how like, what goes through someone's mind? Like, again, they're in a writer's room and they're like, we have to think about like signs and stuff we can put up around the city, and someone goes, instant infant.
And you know what they go? You're fired.
Right.
Put this guy on a watch list.
Yeah.
You're fired. Because I never caught that until we watched it together, and I was like, that's weird. Like, I've been on a few film sets. Everything is there for a reason.
It was there to be seen.
Instant infant. All right, moving on. So, old man.
Well, yeah, gets the sports almanac, runs into that guy, goes back to Doc, and this is where Doc has like one of his very few sensible moments where he's like, Marty,
I did invent the time machine for financial gain.
But it's interesting because it's one point way farther down in the movie, he opens a briefcase full of cash.
Yeah, that was the thing. Is it's like, okay, so I get that you want to go to all historical moments, but how did you not know that this 16 to 17-year-old kid is going to want to bet?
That's true. I mean, maybe he just didn't think about that, potentially.
Doc doesn't seem like a long-term thinker.
Doc is no, Doc isn't like, I have a plan to do this. It's like, let's just do it.
Yeah.
Let's see what happens.
Doc is the type of person to be like, oh, I've got an assignment due tomorrow. That's a problem for future Doc.
Yeah, literally, that's his thought process. But yeah, so Doc freaks out that he has this sports almanac.
This belongs in the trash! And he, like, throws it in the garbage can.
Yeah. And then this is, like, the pivotal scene, because they're arguing, like, right in front of this door, and this is really well shot. Like, I love this camera angle, because, like, he throws it away, they get in an argument, they go back to the time machine, and then you see, like, future Biff, like, the old version, just, like, walk out with his cane.
My favorite.
And he just comes from, like, the shadows.
Yeah.
And it's like, that is really creepy. And then he grabs the sports almanac out, and he's, like, starting to connect the dots of, like, because he hears them say time machine. So he's like, time machine, DeLorean. That would be like if you ran into someone that, like, believed in, let's say, Bigfoot. I mean, who knows? It might be real, right?
I mean...
But then it's like, we just had a side conversation next to this Bigfoot enthusiast, and we're like, oh yeah, so, like, don't mention Bigfoot. And then we walk away, and this guy's like, oh!
He said it!
It's real!
I know where it is. I've been waiting.
Yeah.
You know, a weird man came up to me once, and he talked about Bigfoot being off in the corner of the woods.
Yeah.
and I should have believed him. Like, so then they go back to the car, and it's like, all right, we handled this, we dealt with it. And then they see two cops that are looking at Jennifer. Like, they're like, wow, she's 43 years old. She looks good for 43.
37, that's a hell of a good facelift.
And it's like, oh, God, all right. Well, screw this one up.
And that's another scene where the soundtrack is really well done because it just screeches. Mm-hmm. And then Doc's like, oh, shit, they have Jennifer. And they use her thumbprint to basically determine who she is.
Which, someone watching this is like, that's what's going to happen in the future. They're going to use your thumbprint for everything. You're going to unlock everything with your thumbprint.
But the thing that doesn't make any sense is
that's why I burned all my thumbprints off.
Oh my God. But let's say you're a cop, okay? And you just see this random woman collapsed and unconscious in an alleyway.
Yeah.
And all you do is drive her home. No, there's no questions. There's literally no questions that were asked. It was just like, this is another body we just picked up. Like there was
bring out your dead.
Yeah, there's no questions. I'm like, how do you not what happened?
Oh yeah, no, they don't ask any questions. They just throw her body in the back. That's the thing I feel so bad about Jennifer. Is throughout the entire movie, people are just touching her. People are just grabbing her and throwing her places and just being like, I mean, it's just a body. Like, who cares?
She's like, what day is it? And Doc just knocks her out again.
Exactly. The cops knock her out. Yeah. And the way the cops look, it's really interesting because on their hats, it shows, like, the time, the temperature, all of that. They look like early Resident Evil cops.
Have a nice day, Mrs. McFly.
Just the way that they're dressed. Like, I just imagine them, like, turning corners and just moving really slowly around. Yeah. But no, so they get in the cop car and they drive off.
Yep, and then Marty and Doc basically follow them back to Marty's future house, this is a weird scene to me because Marty gets really excited because he's like, oh, I get to see my future home. And it's like, dude, you are in the future. Your girlfriend's being held by cops right now. Like, you are not in a good situation.
No, you're not thinking about the future at all.
No.
And what I always think is funny is they're like, yeah, this is such a bad neighborhood. And I'm like, oh, it looks pretty nice.
It was like there's 2-story houses. The streets are clean. Like, there's no, garbage or anything. Like, it looks like a genuinely good neighborhood.
It's honestly like, so what are the nice houses like?
True.
Like 20 feet tall. They're like, these are the nice houses. They have a 2-story house? Talk about poverty. Like, when the cops take her in, they're like, yeah, all these zip-zabs and Zoolers and drug heads. Like, it's just like, oh, some of those terms in the future are probably racist.
That's true. What if they were just dropping, slurs, but we didn't know?
Yeah, exactly. Someone's watching it, and they're like, that's super offensive. Yeah. I can't believe that they're saying that. But no, so Jennifer's in the house, and they have, a projection on the wall, and it's showing a bunch of artwork.
Yeah. And it's like they took our windows, and instead of being able to look outside, it's just a screen that's projecting what they want it to look like.
Yeah, which it's just like, okay, I guess that is futuristic for the time.
Yeah, but I don't think that will ever be I want to see the sun. My body needs vitamin D.
Yeah,
I need to know when it's nighttime or daytime, and if there's just a screen, you're living in a box.
You're living in darkness.
I don't know. I don't think that would ever be a thing.
I can't believe this window's still broken.
It's going to turn into the beginning of 7. You're just writing in your journals dear journal, I stared at a blank wall today. So they pull up, and again, neighborhood spotless, no trash.
No.
And Marty's like, I can't believe I live here. What's happening with my life? And it's like, dude.
Marty is basically like Doug from Up. He sees anything and it immediately grabs his attention. He's like, squirrel, and then just goes. Doc is very clear. He's like, Marty, don't talk to anyone. Don't go anywhere. Stay in the time machine. And he sees a machine walking a dog without a human, and he goes, I have to go.
I hate it.
I have to go check that out.
I hate it so much because he gets out, he walks out of the DeLorean, and then he just stares. He just drools. He's just like, yeah. And then
I saw hover cars. But that machine walking a dog?
That's so cool. I need to get out of my car to look at it. I can't sit in the car and just look through the window and keep everything safe. I have to get out and he just stares at it. He just watches it and then Biff comes along.
Yeah, in a taxi, and the taxi cab driver charged him $170.
I love the fact that the taxi cab driver has a bird that's like, rah, give me a tip. Rah, give me a tip.
We should Google and see how far we could go from point A to point B with $170.
Seriously.
And just see how far that would go.
What I think is funny is on the taxi, it says, watch your head, which is like, throughout the entire, like, we're going to get to it, but the amount of times Biff hits his head.
Yeah.
Like, I thought that was, I was like, oh, that's some cool foreshadowing.
Yeah. So Marty's gone, and this is Biff's perfect opportunity to steal the time machine. So he gets in the time machine, and kind of, it's like a drunk driver. Almost like he like hits a dumpster, like finally takes off. And then it goes to the scene back to Jennifer in her future house.
Welcome home, Jennifer.
Yeah, so, I mean, she's basically taking everything in from the future. Mm-hmm. The one thing that I just want to point out is they still use fax machines.
Yeah, that's a really weird part of it, because just kind of going through some of this, because there's a lot of exposition dump where it's like, oh, Marty, well, he hurt himself going playing chicken, truck hit, like it's really kind of just, it goes through it. Michael J. Fox plays 3 characters in the scene, which is...
He plays his daughter.
Which is crazy, because his daughter's kind of hot. I was like, what's happening with my body? But, that's not happened.
But I think an important thing to talk about here is Crispin Glover does not play the grandfather.
Nope, he actually sued them because they took his face and put it on another face.
He took moldings of his face and put it on another actor. Imagine just being that other actor where it's like, no. Get that face, put it on his face. Perfect.
You have an ugly face.
Yeah.
But he made a ton of money, and if you watch the movie, there's a lot of shots where you just don't see his face.
Well, the thing is the grandpa is upside down in this contraption because like something happened with his back, and so like, but the people that were directing it were like, the audience won't be able to tell if he's like upside down and distorted.
Everyone could tell. Everyone could tell. Like I love this movie, but this whole portion where it's like Marty got fired because someone called him Chicken, which the person called him Chicken was
Needles,
actually Needles. He's the bassist for Red Hot Chili Peppers, Flea. He also does the voice of in Wild Thornberrys, Donnie, the little brother that eats like rats and stuff. You know what I'm talking about. If you've ever seen it, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah. If you haven't seen it, go Google it right now.
Google, please. It even's got you've probably seen the meme "Smashing" with Tim Curry.
Yeah.
But you didn't listen for Wild Thornberrys. So there's a huge exposition dump of like, this is what happened to Marty, and then him getting fired, and then there's instant pizza.
Yeah. And then basically Jennifer finds herself in this like room that she's hiding from the rest of the family. And this is an interesting thing that I called out because Doc like knocks on the window and is like, Jennifer, and she's like, oh, Doc, I'm so glad to see you. It's like, even in Back to the Future 1, there's no interaction.
There's nothing
between Doc and Jennifer. So it's like, it's the same questions I have as to like, why is Marty friends with them? How did they meet? Why is Jennifer? Like, how? It's just...
Robert Zemeckis here again. Please don't think about it. And we didn't want her as a character in this movie. Hope it doesn't show.
No, you know what Robert Zemeckis does? He pulls out the device and puts you to sleep.
Or he goes, 100, 200, 300, here you go. Please don't think about this. But no, so she sees herself and she yells, I'm old. And herself yells, I'm young. And they both pass out.
Yeah, and then Doc snatches her body, and he's like, Marty, come get her! And they're taking her back to the time machine as Biff has stolen the time machine and is finally coming back down. They run her back to the car, but Biff, as he's getting out, breaks his cane in the car. So everything kind of goes as planned accordingly to Doc and Marty, because they go back to 1985, and they're like kind of landing, but it's so funny. So they go back to what we know as like the altered Biff timeline.
Yes.
But they like don't notice anything when they're driving around, even though when Marty walks around town a little while later, there's like cars are on fire. There's a tank.
Every car is on fire in the shot. It looks like Mad Max.
Yeah.
Strickland's got Strickland shows up, he's got a pump action shotgun, and he's just like,
Strickland's house gets a drive-by.
I love what he's like.
I've seen you before in my life, but you looked at me like a slacker.
You look like a slacker.
Yeah, he yells, "Eat lead, slackers," and then unloads his shotgun.
And then I Can't Drive 55 starts playing, and it's Biff Towers, which is like Trump Towers.
Yeah.
Like, Biff owns everything. And then there's the newsreel where it's like, Biff in 1955, he sold and bought blah, 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 blah. He's the world's first millionaire. And
he was basically like America's hero, and
America's bully.
It talks about how he basically got his like earnings. And if you pay really close attention, in one of the first screens, it has him showing like a giant check that he won at a horse race.
Yep.
But you see the sports almanac in his like breast pocket of his button up. But he like goes upstairs he doesn't go upstairs. He's like looking at everything, and then the like Three Stooges knock Marty out. And then it's the scene that
we could do this the easy way or the hard way.
Right. And then Marty wakes up, and it's basically like the scene that's in all of the movies where he's like, "Oh, Mom, what's going on?" And he's like, "You're
good old 27th floor."
Yeah.
27th floor!
Yeah. And then he, shoots out of bed, and this is really weird because Lorraine has had very significant cosmetic surgery.
Breast implants. She's got breast implants, and he's like, "You just got bigger." And I'm just like, oh, that's a weird word to come out of your mouth, especially about your mom.
Yeah, like,
do you need room service?
Yeah, it's so weird. And then he is trying to put all the pieces together. He's like, where the hell are we? What the hell happened? And then she says, your father is coming, as Biff opens the door. And this is the first time that you basically see like Super Saiyan Biff, or Biff in his final form, where he has like all of the money and power, and he's like, I thought that prick was supposed to be in boarding school in Switzerland.
All that's missing is cocaine. Like, I wish there were shots of cocaine in this movie.
He just comes and there's powder all over his face.
Seriously, I was thinking about this. Ever since we talked about watching this movie, I'll make it really quick, but ever since we've talked about watching this movie, there's a scene where he is with two basically naked women in a hot tub.
Oh, they're naked. Yeah,
they're naked. And they're watching a Clint Eastwood movie, which the third one's Western. But he's like, this guy gets it. Like, this guy bulletproof vest. What's he thinking? Well, I was thinking about it, and I was like, man, this movie should have ended like Scarface, where Biff was snorting cocaine, and then Marty comes up, shoots him in the back of the head, and he falls into his own swimming pool. That's how it should have ended.
Yeah, I think that would have been ideal, honestly. But so he puts the pieces together and has a panic attack, finds out his dad died, which is like a horrid realization. So, as any natural person would, goes to the cemetery to like figure out what happened.
Somehow he's immediately able to find the gravestone. Like, there should be thousands of gravestones.
There shouldn't be a cemetery.
No, Biff would have bought the cemetery and been like, we need a new casino.
Literally, one of the scenes as he's walking through town is just an open crime scene with dried blood and chalk. And
they wouldn't have a cemetery.
Well, there's a cemetery over here.
Yeah, exactly. Don't worry about it.
And it's kind of creepy because like Doc apparently also finds out that Marty's dad died, and he's like, I'll just wait for him at his gravestone.
Mm-hmm. And it was the same day that him and Lorraine got married. Like, his dad got shot and killed.
Jesus.
Yeah, so...
Well, him and Jennifer got married.
Yeah, Jennifer got married. So, Doc goes through the entire situation with a blackboard, goes through it, the entire area is destroyed, and he's like, no, you gotta get back to Biff, and you gotta, like, we're gonna come up with something. So
because what he's basically saying is that it created an alternate timeline, so he's basically saying time travel isn't linear, it created this alternate dimension, which has so many plot holes in itself. We're not going to get into
that.
But he basically was like, you need to figure out the day and time that he went back, essentially, to give young Biff the Sports Almanac. And he's like, I'll go to him, I'll figure it out. And this scene I thought was not really true to Biff's character, because he walks in the hot tub with the girls, and he goes, you need to tell me about the Sports Almanac. And Biff's like, all right, ladies, you heard him, party's over.
Yeah.
But then he it makes sense in like movie fashion, because it's basically the villain doing the villain monologue where it's like, this is how I built the bomb, and this is how I got all the blueprints, and it's like...
It's an exposition dump. For this movie, it's like, we need... Hurry up. Hurry the movie up. We gotta go. Just say a bunch of stuff. He takes the thing of matches, and this is the great line... Someone told me that a young kid and a weird scientist would be here, and he cocks the gun back.
Yeah.
And then this is when he's like, hey, Biff, look! And he throws something, almost hits him, runs all the way upstairs, up to the roof, and he's, just standing there, and then he's like, the cops will be able to trace the bullet. And then he says one of my favorite lines.
Kid, I own the police!
Kid, I own the police! And then he cocks the gun back and he says, 2 McFlys with the same gun.
Well, yeah, that's where he drops the big line on him that he also killed his father, which is like horrid for Marty to realize. But they're at the roof of the hotel, and Marty knows that Doc is coming up in the time machine, and so he's like, "Kid, just jump. It'll be easier.
It'll be clean."
Yeah, and he does. What appears to be suicide. And the Biff starts laughing, which is kind of insane. And then, Doc is there with the time machine. They hit him with a door.
Watch your head.
And then they're like, let's get back to 1985. And then Doc has the realization of, he's like, of course, like 1955, that has to be the date. Like that's a pivotal moment in time.
Yep.
And they go back there, and it's a really funny scene because it's that same road where they always hide the DeLorean behind that big sign.
Yep.
And Doc is explaining like the plan. He's like, you need to get the sports almanac. We need to destroy it. And he's like telling him everything, but he's running up and down
back
the
and
street.
forth.
Yeah, like a crazy. He's like, we gotta do this, and he runs and he
looks back.
and then he runs the other way, and Marty's like, what are you
And he's following him. He's just like, what's this crazy man saying? Come on, we gotta go. We gotta go. We have no time.
Yeah.
But what I love is he's like, buy some stuff that's inconspicuous. And then Michael J. Fox shows up, leather jacket, shades, walkie-talkie, hat, and he's like, Doc, I'm at the house. I'm at the house.
Yeah.
And then we have one of my favorite parts is when Biff comes out and his grandma's like, "Where are you going, Biff?" I'm going to the dance, Grandma.
He bullies everyone in this town. This poor little group of
I need
kids.
my feces rubbed.
They like drop their ball, and he grabs it. They're like, "Hey, give us our ball back!" And he goes, "You want this? Get it!" And he throws it over, and the kids are like in tears. And then he goes,
Yeah, he throws it, and then he just walks away laughing. And
he laughs like Skeletor.
He laughs like Bowser. But so he's going through town, talks about all the damages of his car because of the first one.
Right.
And this is the part where he sees Lorraine, tries lifting up her dress. It's so bad. And then he's like, "One day you're gonna be my wife, Lorraine."
He yells that to her in the middle of the street.
After assaulting her.
Yeah. And then this is the time you see future Biff talking to like Biff of 1955.
Yep.
He says, "You always had a way with women." It's like, you're saying that to yourself.
Yeah, that just attacked Lorraine. So they get in the car and they drive off and then they park and he's like, "What are you doing in my car, old man?" And he's just like, "Just get in the car." And so they stop and he's like, "Why don't you make like a tree and get out of here?" And then he starts hitting him with the head. He goes, "Make like a tree and leave." Which
you sound like a damn idiot when you say it wrong.
Which, if you've seen the last video we did or listen to the last podcast, that was what was so hard for me not to say. Make like a tree and leave. Yeah. So he shows him the almanac, plays the UCLA game, and he's like 17-13. What are you talking about, old man? 17-13. He wins. Michael J. Fox is in the back seat, and he's like, "You got to keep this on you, and we're gonna be millionaires."
Yeah.
Well,
he doesn't say we.
Not we.
Yeah. He basically is just like dropping this knowledge on him. But I thought it confusing because when Jennifer ran into future Jennifer, he passed out.
Right.
But like future Biff is talking to past Biff, and like nothing happens.
I think Biff is so pissed off. He's full of testosterone that he's like, "Fuck you."
Yeah.
I don't care who you are.
Yeah.
I don't even care if you're an old version of me. So
they lock Marty in the garage.
Marty's stuck.
Yeah, he tries to tell Doc. Doc finally rides his bike like all the way across town because he can't, obviously fly the DeLorean over there.
Yep.
As Biff leaves to go to the Enchantment Under the Sea dance.
Almost hits Doc.
Right, as we know, is a pivotal moment, the Enchantment Under the Sea dance for movie 1. And this is actually where I thought the writing was really good because... because of the effects that are happening in Back to the Future Part 2, it starts to affect them being successful in Back to the Future Part 1.
The stakes are high because it's like, if I mess up, there's no way that the Part 1 happens.
Yeah, it's like you win in blackjack and then you let it ride.
Exactly.
Like, no, take it and leave.
You have to leave.
Yeah. So essentially what Marty's trying to do now is get the sports almanac back from Biff, and it's kind of cool because you see like, Marty doing his thing on the stage, and then it also cuts to Doc, like with other Doc at the time machine on the street.
Yep.
And he basically at some point manages to get the book, or he sees an interaction between Biff and Strickland.
Yes. And this is the one time where in the previous video I was like, no one does anything to Biff. Well, this is actually where he like pushes him around. He takes the almanac. He walks out, he walks into his own place, and he starts drinking Strickland.
He goes to his office.
Starts chugging liquor, which you
Goes
do.
to his office at his school and pulls out a fifth of whiskey.
I mean, if I had to handle 15-year-olds, I'd just drink on the job.
That's true.
But so he's drinking the almanac, and he slams his chair against the desk as Marty's trying to grab the almanac.
Marty sneaks into his office and is trying to steal it from him without Strickland seeing. And he's like under his desk, smashes his hand.
Just the look on Michael J. Fox, I just wince every single time.
Yeah.
But Strickland throws away the almanac, walks out. Marty's like, yes, I finally got it. And he opens it, and it's just a nudie mag.
Yeah, it's like the cover of the Sports Almanac. He switched the books. And so, yeah, it's just like a porn magazine.
And it's so funny because when we were watching it, we went, ooh la la, ooh la la. Like, it's such good delivery. So he calls Doc.
He's like, I screwed up. I totally screwed up.
But what's cool is he calls Doc on the left side of the screen. On the right side, part one's happening. Biff is pulling, George McFly.
You see George's hair. He's like, oh no.
He's screaming, and then he runs out, sees the punch happen. He's like, yes, he did it, yes. And then old Marty comes out. It's just so cool how everything is happening at the same time.
Right.
And then Marty's like, oh crap, like the picture. And so old Marty runs out. But I love how new Marty runs up to Biff, punches him in the face because he comes up. And he's like, guys, I know CPR. And the extra that we talked about, like the other one's like, what's CPR? Punches him in the face, grabs the almanac, runs off. And the guy's like, I think he took his wallet.
I think he just stole his wallet.
Did he steal his wallet? Did you steal his wallet? Runs off and then goes into the dance. Mm-hmm. And then this is when he sees Marty playing the guitar.
Right.
And then the three henchmen come up around and they're like, we're gonna rush him.
This is like an alternative piece of the events that happen in part 2 that affect part 1 is the three henchmen are like, he's on stage, let's get him. Mm. And it's like, if that happened, like Marty with the like shades and everything, new Marty would be erased from existence.
Oh yeah, everything's done. It's finished.
Right. So he like has to stop him. So he kind of gets on stage and then like in great fashion, like almost cartoon fashion, drops a thing of sandbags on the henchman as he's playing Johnny Be Good, other Marty on the stage.
Yep. What I love is after that happens, it like knocks him out, and then when he's like, you guys might not understand it, but your kids are gonna love it. Right after that, one of the henchmen twitches and Marty just like curb stomps him. And then he runs downstairs, and then old Marty starts giving the like, I knew you kids were gonna get together. And then George, yeah. And then Biff shows up, and he's just like, "What are you, chicken?" And he's like, "Nobody calls me chick." Gets hit in the face, knocked out
with the door.
With the door, yeah. As old Marty is running out,
yeah.
Almanac gets taken. Biff runs off.
Yeah, this is where it's a really intense scene. I feel like Biff. Let's stop for the car. It's a really interesting scene with Biff because I feel like Biff has like a very villainous moment because just like you said, Biff steals the almanac back. He's driving away in his like Ford tank basically. Yeah. And they're in this tunnel and Marty's trying to catch up with him as he's explaining to Doc who picked him up at the time machine. He's like, Biff got the almanac back. And so he's like tailing him with his hoverboard. He's holding onto the back of the car. And then they basically get into this fight scene while Biff is driving the car. But, like, he manages to get the almanac, and he ends up on the other side of the tunnel while Biff is on the other side, and then Biff just starts revving his engine.
Just laughing with blood on his face.
It's like, are you gonna kill him?
Oh, he
like,
is.
It's like, okay, you get the sports almanac, you have all of the potential money because you know all of the bets for 50 years. You just murdered someone. Yeah. You're still going to go to jail.
But his car was damaged for $300 of manure, so obviously blood
Time to die.
Blood needs to be shed. So he drives up, and Doc is right above, pulls Marty up, and he drives into manure, and all the manure gets in his mouth. But what I love is when he's like, I hate manure. It's the worst.
And then it pretty much cuts to the end of the movie where they go back to that same road that Doc was running up and down. But Marty was on a ribbon, and so he's down on the street trying to burn the almanac. But also remember, this is the same night of the thunderstorm.
Yep.
So Doc is like flying up there, and you pointed this out. The date machine inside the time machine that indicates where you're gonna go flicks to 1885. And then Marty drops the lamp. He's like, "Don't get hit by lightning up there, Doc." And then, of course, gets hit by lightning.
Burns the almanac. The newspaper changes. It was like, just really quick, it was like Ronald Reagan elected for 5th term, and now it's like Ronald Reagan elected for 2nd term.
Right. Yeah. And then it's a really eerie moment because Doc gets struck by lightning. disappears.
Yeah.
You don't really know where he goes. If you paid close attention, you could probably guess he went back to 1885. But all of a sudden, it starts pouring down rain.
Yeah.
And then this car just pulls up behind Marty. Keep in mind, it's 1955, so there's no development. There's nothing. This guy gets out with a trench coat.
It turns into Mafia 2.
Yeah,
like neo-noir.
He looks at him and he goes, "I got something for you." And he pulls something out.
He pulls out a gun and he shoots Marty in the head, and then the movie ended.
Yeah.
The end. See you later. Adios, guys.
Yeah. He pulls out a letter from Doc that's basically he wrote it in 1885, so it caught up to him and it's like, "I'm in the, 1885 living as a blacksmith." And then this is your favorite part because it cuts to the trailer of part 3.
Yes, because it makes me so happy because he's like, "He's alive! He's alive!" Yeah. He runs back and, Doc is there and he's like, "Yes, we saved it! We saved it!" And he just runs out from the corner, which freaked you out as a kid, and goes, "Doc, no, we have to change the future." And he's like, "I already changed the future," but he's like, "We have to change it again." And he just goes, "Great Scott," passes out. "Doc, wake up, wake up." It says "to be concluded," and then they smash to a trailer for part 3. Yeah. And I remember being a kid and being like, "We need to go to Hollywood Video right now. We need to go to Hollywood Video right now. Part 3, we need to go to Hollywood Video right now." Even watching it downstairs with him, I got so excited. I'm just like, "He's saved! Doc is saved!"
Yeah. So I'm really excited for part 3.
I am too.
As I said last week, that's
Red Dead Redemption. This is the Red Dead Redemption version.
Right. It's my favorite movie of the trilogy. So
really?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome.
There are certain parts in it where I think it really does a great job of seeing the whole family timeline of Biff's family, Marty's family, and so I really like it. But like we said last week, we probably missed some stuff.
Yeah.
But
don't email us.
No, you can. We'll just delete it.
Yeah, we'll just delete it. Trust me. Future Czar and Jared will delete it. We'll deal with that later.
Exactly. Yeah. Well, I hope you enjoyed. You guys tune in next week when we do part 3, and we'll see you then.
Adios.
Adios.
Hallelujah.